Hello, my name is Stephen Carter. Today I'll be talking about building the brain, XML documentation for scalable technical knowledge. Um, so my name is Stephen Carter. I am an associate principal architect at Bounteous. Um, so I have a lot of varied experiences in industry. I actually started as a system administrator, and then from there started working in QA, but my first love was always programming, and I've been doing that since a young age. So eventually I got into engineering, and I found out that I was really well suited toward doing architecture since I had been working as a system administrator for so long. I had views of both sides of, from beginning writing your programs all the way up to, when these things are actually going to be in production and how it's going to work and what the maintenance is going to look like. So that really helped me out a lot when I started doing architecture work. Let's see, a couple other quick housekeeping items. We're all at home right now with the pandemic, so just wanted to warn everyone that I have 3 kids who are all currently sleeping, but who knows how long that will last. Hopefully they will remain quiet throughout. Also have a last-minute plumbing issue, so hopefully there's no noise from that. All right, so a little bit about Bounteous. So we are engineers, educators, designers, data scientists, and marketers. We're headquartered in Chicago. We have a full-service digital experience agency with over 500 employees and offices across North America. Our company has over 20 years of experience in helping companies with web content, commerce, analytics, digital marketing. We've run the gamut here. Our team members, we have a lot of experience. I think right now our average experience is over 15 years. So there's a lot of people here who have a lot of, large pool of knowledge that we can bring to bear. People love working with us, and we have a 90% retention rate, which is pretty high for our industry. And you can see in the graphic at the bottom that we just recently added Wilmington, but we're across quite a few different areas. All right, so let's get into the agenda for today. So first, I'm going to do a brief overview in case anyone either isn't familiar with DITA or isn't familiar with AEM, Adobe Experience Manager. Because my discussion here is going to be about how we brought those two things together for F5, and then a deeper look into how DITA and AEM can be very useful. All right, so we'll go over that story, talk about XML documentation, taking a closer look at a few things. There will be a few key takeaways and pro tips. I don't know why that's advancing so quickly. Sorry. A few takeaways and pro tips, and then I'll have time for Q&A. Depending on how things run out, I might do a quick little demo as well. So first, an overview. Adobe Experience Manager is a comprehensive content management solution. It's very powerful. There's really not a lot that I've ever found that it can't do. And even if something didn't work out of the box, there might have been a feature pack that would enable it, or we as developers could add that functionality in. So it's very extensible. There's a very straightforward authoring interface, which is great. There's a little bit of a graphic there. You can see where it's allowing you to author this section here with some text. Toolbar, it's very out of the way. So it's very what you see is what you get, because the actual elements that you author are actually what's rendering your authoring interface as well. So I think it's a great system. And then it gives you consumable content, which is available across most every digital solution. So the major advantages here: it has cross-channel consistency for content, meaning you can create the content and then also code in support for responsiveness, or use the built-in responsive layout tools to make sure that it looks the same across different platforms. It also gives you close interoperability with Adobe Analytics and Adobe Target for content delivery and personalization, and the tooling there is very integrated with AEM, so you can do some very cool things with that. It's a complete solution, right from you can do your authoring in it, all the review processes, the publishing, the actual serving of the content is all being done from this same system. And it's customizable and extensible through custom development, like I mentioned. So, XML documentation for AEM, what is that? This is a component content management system which enables companies with a high volume of technical documentation to map complex information at scale. I'll talk a little bit more about mapping and that whole paradigm a little later. So what does it do? Well, it allows you to delight customers with consistent experiences by bringing marketing and technical content onto the same platform. And I'll go into more detail about exactly what that means as well later on. This also allows you to standardize your content and data with a simple but powerful web editor. Show some details of what that web editor looks like a little later, and it will empower your distributed teams to contribute and collaborate faster and smarter without stepping on each other. So the value of this is that it delivers a uniform experience to your end users. You increase your enterprise content velocity by up to 3 times, and a lot of that metric is coming from everyone working in the same system. You're not having to move assets or anything between systems. It will reduce your total cost of ownership by up to 40%, and it allows you to efficiently manage the content lifecycle end-to-end with one Adobe solution. So XML documentation for AEM. DITA stands for the Darwin Information Typing Architecture, which I'm sure everyone is aware of at this DITA World conference. But it's an XML system for representing documentation in a structured way. Some primary benefits that I've seen with it is that it gives you interoperability. You can publish to many different formats without requiring source content changes, heavy reuse because your content can be utilized in multiple places, and modularity. So smaller portions of the documentation can be exported in the same way that the larger collection is. So what are we going to cover today? I'm going to start with a brief client success story, followed by an introduction to XML DITA content authoring, publishing, and management within AEM. So F5, what we did for them. So in collaboration with F5, we performed an AEM website migration. We leveraged the XML add-on tool to generate AEM pages from easy DITA documents. This gave us a lot of resource efficiency, improved user experience, both end user and author experience, and increased engagement with the F5 Knowledge Center. Some pain points that we were looking to mitigate here was we're looking for a way to publish technical documentation from easy DITA online, but quickly and automatically. There's a lot of processes that were in the middle that we wanted to automate so that it was truly a one-click publish. The existing processes, like I said, were manual and time-consuming, so we really wanted to get that automated. Their networks run a legacy version of AEM, which caused them to expend a lot of resources maintaining their technical documentation, as you could imagine. And they need to deliver technical documentation that was in line with branding and channel expectations. So our challenge was to facilitate increased engagement with the F5 Knowledge Center by efficiently managing resources and improving the user experience, both the end user and the authors. So our solution was to upgrade to AEM 6.4 and leverage the XML connector. So we migrated all of their documentation pages from the legacy DQ 5.3 to AEM 6.4 and created new templates to render their documentation. So content included pages and assets like images and other unstructured content, as well as the code, which supported their templates, pages, and components. Those had to be upgraded for the new version. We also created a website portal for all technical documentation with special attention to users' experience and increased engagement. So implementing the XML add-on to automatically generate AEM web pages, we wanted it to be a one-click publish from easy DITA to AEM. Now, there wasn't an existing connector for easy DITA into AEM for editing and publishing the DITA documents that existed within AEM. So part of that was using, like I mentioned, the extensibility of AEM, using that to allow us to write a simple connector that could allow us to export that data to easy DITA and then bring it back in from easy DITA once it had been edited. If anyone knows how to pause the slideshow from automatically resuming. Sorry about that. So we implement the XML add-on, which renders the authored DITA content into pages. So the publishing workflow, like I mentioned, we wanted one-click publish. All that was being handled here. That automated the go-live of the pages that were generated in our previous step. We leveraged the AEM content structure and taxonomy to improve navigation and search. So some key implementation details. We had to architect a new site hierarchy and a custom AEM tagging structure to align with EasyDita. This is interesting because what we needed to support was you're looking up documentation for a specific product, but you might have a different version of that product. And so the documentation, there were differences between each of the versions, but most of them had the same base features. So if you were on a page for product A, and you have a different version of product A, you could use the dropdown and select that different version and then still see the same content on that same page, which was, was one of those things we wanted to set up, and we used a tagging structure so that we could identify those things. We structured and formatted all of the templates and components. That was also, part of the migration that we had done. So we built the connector to upload the data documents to Adobe Assets, configured the XML connector to generate pages from the uploaded EasyDita documents, and we leveraged oak indexes for better query functionality and configurations for the sitemap implementation. We had a little different of a sitemap. We couldn't use the out-of-the-box one exactly. We had to do a little bit of tweaking there. So this resulted in a successful migration, which led to increased engagement and lowered maintenance requirements. And that was a big thing. There's a lot of advantages to DITA, but in order to realize them, you need to make sure that you're using an environment that keeps all of your maintenance costs low. So we built a robust platform using AEM, which has improved the way F5 and its customers engage with its knowledge base. Provided scalable foundation, which is built on AEM's best practices. Decreased our resources needed for content management and strengthened our user engagement with the Knowledge Center. So some key learnings. Yeah, go ahead.
Stefan here. There was a little bit of feedback in the chat that you're moving very fast, and people who are not caffeinated enough have a little bit of to follow. Maybe you can slow down a little bit and give us a little bit more time to read also through the text on your slides.
Sure.
That would be awesome. Thank you so much.
Sure thing. I think I'm also getting rushed because my slideshow is trying to rush me. I tried pausing it, but that does not seem to have done anything. All right. Well, I'll just keep bringing it back to the page I'm on. It's not a problem. All right, slowing down. Key learnings. So first, we needed to map the complex nature of our documentation into an intuitive web content structure. I talked a little bit about that, where we had, we wanted the same page to be available for multiple versions of that product, so that you could use that selector to go to the same page, but go to a different version of that product's page without having to navigate through the whole structure again. The XML add-on, they were supported by powerful APIs and out-of-the-box workflows, and we were able to use those for the F5 project with a little bit of tweaking. There's a note here, we leveraged and surfaced the existing metadata from EasyDita, which improved navigation and search for the end user. So here, one of the key points here is that we had additional data in EasyDita, and it wasn't quite matching the structure that we use in AEM for pages, title, description, all of that. But we spent a little bit of time making sure that we were mapping that as appropriately as we could between the two systems, so that we were getting the most benefit out of that metadata. We ended up using almost all of the metadata that we were bringing over as well, which was fantastic. So now I want to move on and talk a little bit more about the joining of XML documentation with AEM and some of those tools. So as a quick overview for AEM DITA, or DITA within AEM, first, it supports just uploading an existing DITA site. You maintain your relative paths, all of your assets, your topics, DITA maps, all of that. As long as it's within the proper structure, you can just pop it in a folder and then click on your DITA map, and using the AEM tooling, it will generate an AEM site for you in no time at all. It's fantastic. It works directly out of the box. The only thing you might have to look into is if you're using any custom DITA elements, then you'll have to create components to render those for you. And if you're using just really anything that isn't standard DITA, then you might have to do a little bit of extra work, but everything standard works out of the box right away. Everything is immediately authourable with built-in tools, and that can integrate with your existing authoring practices. So you can either use the built-in authoring interface in AEM itself, or you can use say you're using FrameMaker or Oxygen XML, any of the other editors, you can use those still. You might have to do what we did in the case of EasyDita, which was create an API connector between the two. Open Toolkit, DITA Open Toolkit plugins can be set up. And like I just mentioned, custom components can be created to render specialized DITA content. Your base AEM templates can be overridden. You'll see an example of what the base template looks like in the next page, and I can also show a little bit of that in my demo later. It has AEM translation support for asset versioning and tracked changes, just like base AEM for the marketing pages. And there are site generation profiles, which can be created with several out-of-the-box outputs. So some of the main ones that are ready to go are the AEM sites that you'll see on the next page. EPUB format, HTML5, and PDF are all working out of the box. So if you generate a site, I took the DITA Open Toolkit documentation, and like I said, I just uploaded that documentation as is and told it to render the AEM site, and this is what it creates for you. So this is all default out-of-the-box output from DITA to an AEM site with its publishing. It includes breadcrumbs for historical navigation. You can also have references to other related articles, and clicking those will take you directly to that page and show up in the breadcrumbs. And it has built-in search capabilities, as you can see up here. And the search works out of the box as well. All right, so an example of the authoring interface. You'll see we're in author mode right now. There's also a mode where you can view the source or a non-authoring preview of the page, as well as closing this tool. This interface here, I have this panel collapsed. You'll see that panel a little later, and I'll also show a little bit of this in my demo. You can see some of the main, saving, versioning, undo, redo, some of those tools here, which you would expect to see, as well as tracked changes, which I'll talk about in a few pages. And then some of the content tools here, as well as checking in and checking out this document. All right, so there's a tabbed interface here, so you can actually have multiple things open at the same time and flip between them if you're referencing other pages. So this feels very much like an IDE when you're in here. The great authoring environment. You can see right now the cursor is on this word here. It's bolded. It's inside of a short description, which is inside of a reference. So you can look at the hierarchy of where you are at on any given page as well. So this is a view of when you enable the source mode. You can see the page source over here. You'll notice that there is, excuse me, you'll notice too that there is syntax highlighting. So you have for your elements, color, your attributes, the content of your attributes, and then the actual content within the tags are all showing up here. So DITA authoring in AEM. The authoring interface is very simple to use, but it provides a lot of power. There's not much that I have been able to do in this interface. In fact, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. The editing and rendering utilizes the same components that are used for rendering the final AEM site output. So it truly is what you see is what you get. When needed, you can always go into the XML source, which is always available. And it's right in the same interface. You can flip between it without having to wait for a lot of pages to load or anything like that. You'll have your conditionals, condition presets, baselines, etc. All of those are authourable from within the AEM interface. And your existing marketing assets and content can be utilized in the technical documentation. And I'll probably touch on this 2 or 3 times throughout this presentation because I think it's such an important key piece of what really helps with DITA inside of AEM. The idea is that you can be selling a product, pre-sale, you're showing the product, you're showing some images of the product, and then a user has purchased this product, and maybe your email to the user telling them, uses that same image about the product. For a lot of companies, that's maybe where it stops. And then maybe the post-sale journey for the user, when they're looking at documentation, when they're trying to get support for their product, maybe that's on a completely different site. The idea here is that you can have your documentation for those products directly within the same system that's managing the pre-sale marketing assets. You have access to those same assets. And you're using the same or a very similar editing interface for even including those assets inside of your documentation, which I think is very powerful and is one of the things that really helps to streamline your development time. Also, change and revision tracking is a powerful way to aid your workflows. So taking a closer look at this. So first, yes, there is a dark mode. I have a corny joke because, like I mentioned, I'm a dad 3 times over now, so I got to have those dad jokes. Why do programmers prefer dark mode? Because light attracts bugs. So here's another view of the XML editor, this time without the side panel collapse. So you can see when you're editing this piece here, you can see which element you're working on and then its hierarchy within the overall rest of the document. This is something that you might not think is important maybe until you've done a lot of this authoring, when you've maybe done, say you have a div or, like in this case, it's a context, but the only thing within it is this paragraph tag. Well, when I'm clicking over in here inside the content, I'm never going to be able to pick the context. When I click on the text, I'm only going to get this paragraph. So this makes it easy to select the context if you need to do anything with that or add any properties or other attributes to that element. This is very useful over here on the side. You see multiple tabs are open here. So we're editing multiple pages here, and you can flip between them like I mentioned earlier. Oh, and I mentioned earlier about that breadcrumb too. So this is great for when you're editing. If you need to, without having to go over to the side panel, you can actually do it here too to go up your hierarchy chain a little bit. You see there's some versioning displayed here. And then any properties that you have on this element or any changes, which I'll show in a moment. So, tracked changes. When you turn on the tracked changes mode, which is this little icon here, you can start seeing a list of changes that have been made with a brief description of them and who made them. Normally, you're not likely to be, if you're a content author, you might not be the approver, so you may not see these reject and approve change buttons if you're not someone who's able to see those or to actually click those buttons. But here we can, because this is the master user, the administrator. So you can see this has been deleted, so it's got a red line through it, and this green is something extra that I added, just a little contrived example to show this. So once you've had those tracked changes, then you can ask for a review on your tracked changes. You put a title on it, reference the project, who to assign it to, a brief description of what the changes are you made and why they're being made, and then a due date for someone to approve it, and then allowing those assignees to review any topic. Excuse me. So, like I mentioned earlier, you still have access to the XML source on any page. You just flip between it on the author and source view. And you can merge changes from different versions. This is a really interesting feature that works really well. So let's say that on this version, we had made these changes, and on another version, we had gone back and decided we didn't want those changes yet when we went back to the base 1.0 version. Then we made new changes and created a new version from those. You can actually then merge those, changes together. giving us a final version that includes both sets of changes. We can also create conditions, and new in the, I believe it's the 3.6 version of the XML DITA connector, you can also choose colors for your conditionals. Previously, they were, any conditionals were displayed in yellow, but now you can choose a color that you want your conditionals to show up as. So an example of that is here, where we've created two conditionals, one to only be displayed to experts, one to only be displayed to novices, and we can tell which section is being displayed to each. And again, this is just a contrived example. All right, probably my favorite feature is next, which is importing unstructured content. So I created this really simple, quick Word document talking a bit about one of my favorite series, just some quick notes in there. And I used the structural tools like, heading, heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, paragraph, and then some text inside of those sections. And I'm able to create a folder in the root of the DAM called Word Files. DAM meaning the Digital Asset Manager inside of AEM. Create this folder called Word Files, and I don't remember if I created this folder as well, the W2D. I think that will be automatically generated, but then I just drop my Word document into this folder, and it does some magic and converts the Word document from this unstructured content into a DITA map and topics, and it includes the files and all of the picture assets that I had. And I can go ahead and I can create an AEM site right from this Word document. So say you have a 50, 60 word page document and you just want to pop it in there and use some of the content from it, you're able to extract just portions of that content as well. All right, so real quickly, I want to talk about some key takeaways and pro tips. Then I will start showing a little bit more of a demo. So some advantages to utilizing AEM for DITA. First, you're leveraging rich tooling that already exists within AEM. And AEM is the leader within the CMS space. It's a fantastic product. It's great for authoring. It's great for developers. You can do a lot with it. So there's already a lot of rich tooling there, and it's just extending that now to add support for working with this technical documentation. So DITA can then be authored in the same interface that your marketing teams utilize, and that's cool because you can actually have people who maybe are trained in using AEM already, training content authors on how to use some of the more AEM specific tooling, or vice versa. And you can trade off some of your content authors perhaps, and they can work on a larger breadth of content. You can reduce your overhead by combining your tools and your processes. So I talked about this a little earlier, where everything then is being done within AEM. You don't have to cross different tools or do a lot of importing or exporting and maybe sending it to another tool that does your rendering. It's all in one tool. This increases your rate of publishing and reduces the overhead of authoring. So AEM enables authoring, approvals, workflows, publishing. So it runs the gamut of things you need in order to, but it is your end-to-end solution, all the way from initial putting your assets and your content in there, authoring some stuff, through approval workflows, publishing, and also serving that content then to the end user as well. Your content, designs, assets, all that can be shared between the technical writing team and the marketing team since they live on the same platform. And I had gone a little bit into that earlier, explaining why that's such a big deal, being able to have your pre and post-sale journey all in one place. Keeps your technical and marketing content on the same platform and contributes to the customer's pre and post-sale journey continuity. Also, all the content that gets put in with the AEM site that's generated is immediately searchable. This allows users to find what they're looking for quickly with no extra setup necessary. A few more little technical details. So you can create custom DITA element types. And if you want to map those then to AEM types, then there's just a couple bullet points on what you'd have to do here. One is you have to overlay some stuff within AEM. and create a custom mapping to reference those, as well as on this next page talking about templates. And there is a great blog post, which is right here by my colleague Rob, going into how all of this is accomplished in far more detail. So while you can get the quick gist of it from these slides, I really encourage you to check out this blog post. All right, I'm going to take a brief pause here, and let's switch over to do a quick demo. All right. How does the screen look okay? It's readable? I will assume so.
It's good, yeah.
Okay, great. So the XML editor that I was talking about earlier, let's see, we can bring up one of these. Probably not a great example. There we go. So you can see this is the content that I've been working on earlier. And I also want to go to the generated site for this. All right. Sorry, I don't actually want to edit that. But once you've generated your site, this is what you'll see. You see there's hover effects, and this is all out of the box. All I did for this was take the documentation for DITA Open Toolkit, upload it into a DAM asset folder, and then created an AEM site published it, took maybe 20 seconds. So you can see there is a search interface over here. And then I can search for that word. It's either was used in the title here, but it's used in the body of the content here. Click to go to this, and all of this styling, everything is just out of the box AEM. It's very impressive. You'll see the side panel here for additional navigation, as well as being able to go up to other elements, related information. Yeah. So back to this real quick. On the side panel here, there's different views that you can use. There's the map view, the outline view that I was showing earlier, as well as reusable contents, which is like little blurbs of content that you can use in other pages. You can create your glossary of terms, conditions that exist on the page. And you can see these, you can change the color, for example. Now, this content on the page, if I target something with it, we'll now be using that color. If I change it one more time, I'll show you that it changes in real time. You also notice that it's smart enough to update the contrast of your text based on your coloring here. All right, so I can go over into any other details specifically as needed, but before I do that, I just want to get a sense of what sort of questions may have come up so far, and have a chance for answering those questions. And while we're waiting for the questions, just wanted to show you can email me if you have any specific questions, or if you wanted to reach out about any business development or questions in those regards, then you can reach out to John Anthony or Rachel Kessler.
So we do have a question from Paul that was asked the most recently. Can you clarify what you mean by a DITA site? Do you just mean a directory structure containing DITA topic files and maps, or something else?
So yeah, taking starting from a DITA map and its relationship with all of the topics and the like underneath it, it generates this site that I just showed.
So for this, the full site is.
Yeah, it started from a DITA map.
Yeah.
Let me go back
Have you ever, and so in somewhat of a related topic here, have you ever output to a wiki with AEM, or have you tried to tackle some of the challenges with an open system like a wiki using your AEM content? Have you had any success with that?
I personally haven't done anything like a wiki. We've only used this for traditional documentation with XML DITA, so I couldn't speak to any of the challenges that you might have trying to do that with a wiki or something like that. But I could see how you might be able to take, say, MediaWiki or some other wiki structure and have some sort of translation from that into, since it's already kind of a structured format itself, into DITA and then to AEM site. But going directly from wiki to AEM site, it would be more work.
Yeah. Personally, it seems like wiki is almost more of an output format rather than a content management format. And so you might take your AEM site and then push it to a wiki-friendly environment. But using that modified wiki content, you're probably not ever going to back into AEM.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
So someone had asked about the site. So if I click on that DITA map, this is what you'll see. And you can select to output to an AEM site. You can create another output format. Say you're using, you could choose a different output type, maybe custom, and you're going to actually just pass out command line arguments to DITA Open Toolkit. But so go back to the, I just want to continue. Going back to the AEM site, it tells it where to generate that to, whether you want to overwrite your existing content every time, some other options here for cleanups and deleting orphan files. You can also pick condition presets, or you could create those right here, like I was talking about earlier. Baselines, reports. So this might tell you things that are missing or files that weren't found. I just had quickly copied these things in, so there might be some tweaks that would need to be made to the DITA Open Toolkit documentation itself here that I didn't really look into, so that's why you're seeing some warnings here. As well as managing translations. That's cool. And then, so no output's been generated for this, so if I go back to output presets and tell it to, and I can go to outputs, and
if you get a chance, could you just increase the size of your font within your browser window there? There you go. Oh, that's much. Yeah, it matches your presentation size a little bit more. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. So it's still running. I think it takes about, last time I did this was like 20 seconds or so.
Well, here's a good question for you. And I missed the reference within your presentation, but did you inadvertently refer to CQ somewhere? The name of AEM before it became AEM.
Day CQ, yes. So in the F5 story, they were originally on 5.3, I believe.
There you go. Yeah.
And we migrated them from 5.3 to 6.4. So from the old classic UI to some of the components had to be updated to the touch UI. So there's also some training involved there. I tried to focus that whole discussion on the DITA specific pieces, though.
Sure. Yeah, quite a difference in interface in the last few years with AEM, that's for sure. For the better.
Yep. So this was a very, very similar DITA map, but I had not actually generated the output for that one. So now this is the output for that DITA map. And that's all it takes is going to that interface, clicking the checkbox, and clicking generate, as long as you're using all of the standard DITA elements. If you're using anything custom, then you'd have to actually create the custom AEM component so it knows how to render the content that's within those new components.
Yeah. Any sense there of the say 1 to 10 on the difficulty factor of moving away from standard DITA? Is that for the not for the faint of heart, or is that something that's manageable from your perspective?
I think it depends on why it's needed. So there might be situations where you have some really interesting content or something that really needs to be displayed in a very dense format that you maybe don't want to do in like a tabular format or something, and you want this custom element to render that for you. It's very specific content. Then I could see you creating a custom DITA element type to hold all the attributes for it in the content, because you also one of the benefits of DITA is that you're going to be generating this across different output formats, your AEM site, your PDFs, portions of your site being generated as PDFs, maybe to be printed for a particular components being shipped out. So you don't want to add too much custom DITA elements unless you have a very great need for it, because you're going to have to do the work to create the custom rendering for each of the different formats that you're going to be exporting to.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't do it just for, we want a slightly different edited paragraph format.
Yeah. It gets back to that ever popular phrase, well, yeah, we can do whatever you want as long as you've got a check. So.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where you want to consider you're branching out from the benefits of DITA at that point, because
Sure.
Now instead of being something that's uniquely or universally understood by all of these different systems and formats, you're branching out, and now you have to do work for every other format that you're ever going to export to.
Maybe a more politically correct statement would be, how important is it to you?
Yep, that would work too.
That means. Liz is asking a question about the conditions that you have in use. Is there a way you can display some of the conditions that you've got there? And then she's got a need to document products with different features and then organize or configure by conditions.
I presented on this similarly before, where I think I was able to show where there was a list of the different conditions that were present. Mm-hmm. It was a little deep in there, but I don't think that's exactly the question. I think I was starting to try to find the answer to it before you finished the questions. But in terms of conditions, let me just preface this with, I'm not a DITA expert. I've been working with AEM for years, and I've recently started working with bringing DITA into AEM. So some of this may be something that a DITA expert could talk more about, when you'd want to use conditionals and how you would use them and what sort of workflows you might want to use in that regard. But as for conditionals with the DITA tool inside of AEM, that is pretty straightforward. So I create a condition here. So you can pick an attribute that you want to be the base of your condition. So say, let's see, the platform that you're going to display it on. Maybe Linux users need to do one extra step or have one extra note for when they're installing your content. Then you could do something, this isn't out of the box, but you could do something where you say, check the user agent and identify that they are a Linux user, and then conditionally render that element to them based on that. So I've created this platform condition, and I want to say that maybe this is only displayed when you are on that platform. So I can pick platform from here and select the Linux version, and now this is only going to be displayed when this conditional is true.
Right.
Then back in the rendering, you can set up the condition presets to action for the selected conditions, and the default is to exclude them. And I need to add a conditional for platform, Linux, action, include. Now, if I save this, then now I have a condition preset and I can apply or unapply it for this output preset. So I could have content output site slash default and then slash Linux and have a different copy of this down here, for example, this custom preset. Sorry, there we go. I could edit this one, tell it to be an AM site. I want to apply conditions using condition presets, using the Linux condition preset. Does that answer the question? I feel like I've talked about what I know about DITA with AEM and condition
Not only does it
presets.
answer the question, it shows that that you can think quite well on your feet. So we've got, so just to kind of broaden it out a little bit, you've got AEM and the ability of AEM to produce documentation with specific conditions applied. And then, of course, you've got, for those that are FrameMaker-centric, you've got the ability with FrameMaker to work with DITA or other sorts of content that go into AEM, and then to work with those conditions within FrameMaker to be able to manage those multiple variables, those multiple feature sets, and to manage outputs and schedule outputs using AEM or using Frame Publishing Server, so that you create a raft of outputs automatically, rather than having to, what we're trying to get to with all of these different conditions, of course, is to save time and to increase accuracy. So you can create that raft of outputs that either allow the end user to choose between different conditions or condition sets, or allow individual concrete outputs that address specific feature sets for individual audiences. And I think that's where she was trying to go with that question. All right, and I think Stefan may be coming back in. He was off doing some admin stuff here.
Yes.
Let's see. Yeah, there you go.
Just onboarding the next speaker. So I did miss a little bit what you were talking about, and I'm not completely up to date with the chat.
Yeah, I think we've got quite a few things in the Q&A pod, which may be of a technical nature. You might want to look at those real quick. I'm just running through them real quick.
I see there are 3-4 open questions. Have they been answered already from Liz?
Well, Liz had we just showed conditions in use, or I'll put it answered by.
Someone asked if you could do conditions from a DITA val file, and you can. Showing that right here.
Yeah, we were mainly on that question by Liz there.
No, we both answered. It's answered. Can you output variables for values that are different in products? That is answered as well, right?
I think that was related.
Okay. And does AEM support import of conditions from a DITA file? Was also answered, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, that's right here.
Then we are catched up with the questions.
So, Stephen, any interesting projects that you have on the horizon? Anything that you're looking forward to getting involved with, or even if you're not looking forward to it, that you'll be tackling in maybe the next quarter?
Put on the spot, not that I.
Nothing you can talk
about, or at least that I know I can talk about it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. I was just thinking in terms of topics rather than vendors or clients.
I know that I've been hearing a lot. John Anthony is on this other slide here. He has been hearing a lot of people asking about DITA and XML documentation and using that within AEM. So it's definitely been picking up, it seems like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interestingly, nobody can leave their house, but there's plenty of people that are sitting in their house thinking about what they're going to do in the next quarter strategically with their documentation and with all these people that create the content.
Yeah, I think I've seen that too, where there's a lot of introspection into, and also some, looking at ways to do things efficiently, which, I mean, I'm not just paying it lip service. I think that it's a great marriage of things between DITA and AEM to both the authoring interface and the publishing. You're able to do it all in one tool, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.